Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of the Fantasy Roundup here on bet.nola.com. It is our 2022 Fantasy Baseball season preview. I'm Zach Ewing, along with Jim Derry and, of course, Spencer the Guru Urquhart. Glad to be with you here. It's about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks until the season starts. But we hope that this, if you're watching live, we hope you can give us some comments, some questions. We're happy to answer them as we go on over the next hour or so. But we do hope this stays a resource for you whenever your draft is. If it's this weekend, the following weekend, maybe it's right before the season begins on April the 7th. If you have a draft or an auction, we'll talk about strategies for both of those things. Spencer has his rankings, and we've all got some guys we're targeting, guys we're avoiding, all sorts of fun stuff in store. So if you have a question about fantasy baseball, feel free to leave it in the comments on Facebook or YouTube, and we will certainly get to it as we go on. First of all, guys, I have to say, I'm just happy that we're having this show and that there is a baseball season and that it's starting close to on time.
Yeah, most definitely. They were getting pretty deep into the stubbornness as far as having the lockout extend, but luckily they got it done. And yeah, we're going to have the season of 462, so we won't have to worry too much about the stuff being altered. The pitchers, it's going to be, pitchers will probably be more vulnerable, but at least they'll ease them in at first, so it shouldn't be too bad.
Yeah, let's talk real quick, Jim, about some of the effects from this season. As Spencer mentioned, a shortened spring training. Maybe you worry about injury-prone pitchers, especially early in the year. Also,
well, Zach froze up there, but Spencer, to go with what Zach was talking about, and one of the things that I'm trying to pass in my league, I have not proposed it yet because we haven't had a draft yet, but I'm trying to propose that we drop our minimum yearly pitching requirements from 1,000 innings to 900, because A, pitchers are already pitching less than they pitched before. And B, I think this year, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that they're going to be easing pitchers in. I think a lot of pitchers aren't going to be qualifying for wins early in the season because they're only going to pitch for 4 1/3 innings or something along those lines. So I think it's going to be a very weird start. And I'm very concerned about starting pitching for sure. That'll be my number one concern.
what about, I'm sorry, I froze up there. Can't seem to get the connection strong here. But the other thing I was going to bring up, Jim, is that now we have a DH in the NL as well. You're in an NL-only league. How are y'all handling that?
Well, we already have what we call the utility player anyway, which was basically our DH. So it won't affect too many guys except for guys like Nelly Cruz. But you're going to have to, if you draft a DH, the only place he qualifies is in your DH slot. So that's one less player that you'll be able to one less spot you'll be able to move around. You won't be able to draft 3 first basemen anymore, or 3 or 6 outfielders anymore, or whatever. It'll be you'll be using your DH slot for a DH, which will make things a little bit harder in NL only drafts.
Yeah, and a lot of teams now are using the DH as like a pseudo day off that they rotate around the roster anyway. And so some of those guys are going to have positional eligibility at other positions. And so that's helpful too.
That will evolve, I think, though. I think at some point,
a guy like Nelson Cruz,
right?
A guy like Nelson Cruz, in years past, if he was playing for the Twins or the Mariners or the Rangers or the Red Sox, or all the stops he's been, if they went to an NL park, you were out of luck that week. He wasn't going to play. He was going to get maybe a few pinch hit appearances. But now he should be in the lineup most days. So, good comment here from Troy Thibodeau about how early do you take Acuna and Tatis Jr. We'll get to that. That's a great question.
Both of those guys are on my list somewhere, so we're going to talk about the list that we're about to get to. They're both of those names are on my list.
Yeah, let's just say one of them I like more than the other. One of them I like more than the other. And Troy's a Braves fan. Acuna, I'm okay with. Tatis, though, different story.
Yeah, and we will certainly get into that. We'll dig into it right now. I first want to mention that the Fantasy Roundup is brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook, and it's March Madness going on strong right now. Lots of stuff after that as well. Caesars does have a sign-up bonus. If you're a new user, you can get a risk-free bet up to $1,100. So meaning you like a game, you put as much as you want on it, up to $1,100. And if you should lose, you get another crack at it, essentially. You get a free bet. And so you kind of have 2 bites at the apple there. Pretty good promo. And we'd like you to use the promo code NOLACZR for that one. Or you can just go to NOLA.com/Caesars, and that will take you right to the sign-up page for the app. So with that said, let's dig into it a little bit. Spencer, I want to start with you. Here's what we started with. We each picked 5 guys that we like better than the consensus, 5 guys that we like less than the consensus. And what we used was ESPN's average draft position to this point. And so basically you look at that ADP and say, these are 5 guys I'd be willing to go a little higher than. I'd be willing to take them sooner than that. And then we'll get to 5 guys I wouldn't take them that high. I wouldn't take them unless they fell. Okay, so Spencer, you're up first. 5 guys that you like better than the consensus.
Right. Yeah, I'll start with Bo Bushet. I can't believe Bo Bushet's ADP was that low because I feel like he could be worthy of a first-round pick. The dude's just a pure hitter. He's one of the best hitters in the league. Young cat, shortstop, and he's good all around. He can steal some bases, has some pop in his bat, and in a potent Blue Jays lineup will get plenty of runs and RBIs. Really a 5-tool player that you could get there in the beginning part of the 3rd round. That's crazy to me. I think he'll eventually get up to the 2nd round, but take advantage of that right now if your draft's about to come up. And then Freddie Peralta, young arm for the Brewers. Everyone's talking about Corbin Burns and Brandon Woodruff. I feel like Freddie Peralta kind of gets forgotten about there. Didn't get a full workload last year being a young cat, but he can bring the heat. He has an amazing strikeouts to innings pitched ratio, and he should continue to grow and pitch more innings this year and have a huge year. Probably 200 plus strikeouts on the horizon. And Louis Robert for the White Sox. He's the other 5-tool guy, kind of like Bo Bichette, just a pure hitter, hits for average, pop, runs a little bit too, and in a potent lineup. Chris Bryant moving to the Rockies. I really like that for fantasy. We all know he's a former Cubby there. Yeah, moving to the Rockies. He's a guy in Coors Field. We all know the Coors Field effect. I think he'll definitely benefit from that. And then Starling Martay, I know he's a little banged up, but assuming he's healthy, he should be going a lot higher than 110. He's a stolen base machine and in a good Mets lineup.
Yeah, sometimes these – yeah, absolutely. So I like that Martay pick. Sometimes these guys who are a little bit injury prone, you can get a steal on them. I mean, just because they've had injuries in the past, it's not always predictive. So we'll see about him. Bo Bichette, it's interesting. Jim, I want to get your take on him because his ADP at ESPN is 24.8. I think if you look at the ESPN rankings, they've got him ranked like 18th or something. Yahoo's got the guy ranked 3rd. I mean, so he's all over the map. Some people really like this guy as a first-round talent.
Here's my take on Bo Bichette. I'm so old. I had Dante Bichette, his daddy, on several of my teams in the past. That's how old I am. So if he's anything, if he turns out to be anything in the future like his dad was with the Colorado Rockies, he's going to be quite a player. But yeah, I think that is a little low. Again, I'm mostly an NL guy, and the Blue Jays are the hardest team to watch as far as being able to watch them. Not if they're on. You can watch them. They're fun to watch. They hit. But it's hard to find them because they're not even always on the ticket because of Toronto having a weird network. So, and now they're going back to Canada, and all the things going on in Canada. The Blue Jays are going to be an interesting team to watch, and Vladdy Jr. And so, Bo Bichette is an exciting player, but I'd still rather have his dad.
But it is interesting. I mean, it's like depending on where your league is based. And I love Dante Bichette too, by the way. Blake Street Bombers for life. If your league is based in ESPN, where Bo Bichette is ranked 18th, or versus Yahoo, where he's ranked 3rd, it makes a difference because there's going to be people in every league who are just clicking the next guy on. They're either auto drafting and it's automatically taking, or they're there, but they're only looking at the first 5 or 6 names on the list, and they're going to pick one of those guys. And so it just, like in Yahoo, he's going to go a lot sooner than he is in ESPN. And I don't know offhand where he is in all the other various things, but like I don't know that I'd make him the number 3 pick. But certainly at ESPN, he's worth picking in the second round.
It's a weird thing for me because I haven't played in one of those kind of leagues in a long time. I mean, most of the leagues I play in are meetup leagues. We have our drafts and we all meet up, and so I'm not real. It's been a while. I remember the last time I did one of those, I got hosed by auto draft. Not me, but someone disappears and they get like the guy that I'm about to draft, or they stink it up for the first 3 rounds, they disappear, and then auto draft does a better job than they would have done. So I'm never a fan of playing in this kind of leagues where you get auto draft in there and in the rankings. But you're absolutely right. If you're in an ESPN league and his ADP is 24, then still though, do you wait? Do you try to wait and sneak him in the second round? Probably not, because somebody's else is gonna be ready for him.
Yeah, I mean, if you like a player, look, you got to grab him. Sometimes that means you have to reach 5 or 10 picks earlier than what you're comfortable with. Because if you
100%.
don't in a draft scenario, in an auction, it's different. Right? I'm going to pay $5 more than anybody else is going to pay. Well, I'm going to get that player because I love him. In a draft, you have to be the equivalent of $5 more is I'm willing to take him a whole round sooner than somebody else just because I want to make sure I get it. Because a snake draft, you're going to wait 15, 20 picks before you pick again sometimes. So,
and you say that, and I'll get into my picks here, Zach, but I haven't done a straight draft in a long time. I mean, I pretty much only do auction drafts. All my leagues are auction drafts, and the leagues that I get in, I'm not real keen on getting in regular because of what you say. I mean, I like being able. There are guys I want to target, like maybe some of these guys on this list. I want to be able to get them if I want. And speaking of that. Troy Thibodeau asked about Ronald De Koonian. He's my number 1 guy. I think you can get earlier later than 3rd or 4th round. Now, had he not got hurt, you're talking about a first round guy here, and he's only going to miss. He's supposed to miss a month, but I have a sneaky suspicion that he's going to come back before that month. He said he was ready to play already going into spring training. Now, management's holding him out, but at some point. They may let him go if he's okay. And even if they don't, 5 months of Ronald Acuna is worth more than plenty, I think, of the guys ahead of him. He's still going to hit – if he only plays 5 months, he's still going to hit 275. He's still going to hit around 30 home runs. He's still going to knock in 80 or so runs with that loaded lineup. And his steals are going to take a hit. He'll probably only get 15 or so of those. But I love Ronald Acuna in the 3rd or 4th round. Max Muncy, obviously – moving over to second base full time. He qualifies there at second base already. But even though his batting average is a little bit low, you talk about a guy who can hit 35 to 40 home runs from the middle of your infield. That's not something you find all over the place. And ADP of 61.5, it sounds pretty good to me. Blake Treinen is not getting a lot of love. Kenley Jansen now going to the Braves. I love Blake Treinen as one of the better closers, and he's being drafted in the 11th or 12th round. And to me, he can be one of the top closers of the game. It would not surprise me at all if he led the NL in saves. Sonny Gray moving over to the Twins, back into his American League home, where he likely feels more comfortable. And obviously, the biggest thing with him is he's always an injury risk, which is one of the reasons why his numbers drop. But he's a near lock for double-digit victories. ERA is going to be in the 3s most likely. Love him there. And then CJ Crone, we talked about the Rockies and the Blake Street Bombers, and this is a guy that gets no love to me at all. I think CJ Crone is an excellent bargain in the middle to late rounds, especially if you strike out on some of those big name first basemen, and there are tons of first basemen. So if you don't get one of the guys you really want earlier, then just hang on and wait till the middle to late rounds, and you can get CJ Crone.
Interesting follow-up here from Troy, saying, like, and I think this is right, now that the news is coming out that Acuna may be back sooner. Yeah, his ADP is still 43. Some of that is skewed by drafts that were a month ago, and people were taking him later. What's the earliest you'd take him? and I'll ask both of you
Right.
guys that question. Would you take him late first round? Would you take him early second round? I mean, he's going to miss a month. We don't know if he's going to be, himself right away. What's the earliest you'd take Ronald De Koonian?
I don't think you can use a first round pick on him, just because there are other risks besides the fact that he is going to miss up to a month. With guys that have injuries, major injuries, they often find themselves in a position where they need to take more time off later, or they aggravate things, or end up going on the IL for a time or two. So I don't think you can risk taking a first round pick with him, but I wouldn't be hesitant to take him in the second round.
Spencer?
Yeah, I'm with Jim on that. I'd say mid to late second, probably at least mid second if you're going to get him, because somebody's probably going to, they see him there in the second, they're like, yeah, I'm going to swoop in and take him, being that he's normally a first rounder that would be if it wasn't for the injury. And I mean, coming off the ACL, he'll probably be limited at first with the not being able to run as good like normal. Might have to DH some early, which, I mean, it doesn't affect his fantasy values more from a real life baseball perspective. But yeah, he's still going to be really good. I mean, he's definitely worth a top 2 pick, I'd say, because if you try to think, I'm going to get him in the third, fourth, I mean, someone's going to get him. He's just too big of a name. I feel like he might get reached on in the first, and if so, then y'all can have him. But if he makes it to me in the second, then I'll take the risk.
I think he'll last till the second or third round in most leagues, and I do think in some leagues he'll make it to the fourth round, depending on how deep or shallow the league is.
Yeah, I mean, it just takes one person to want him. I'll put it this way: I think in a roto league he may last longer, because a guy missing a month in a roto league is a big deal. You can't have your first round pick missing a month and compete. In a head-to-head league, if you could survive and get into the top 4, top 6, whatever it is in your league, and make the playoffs, well, Ronald De Koonian might win that league for you. And so I would go up a little bit higher in a head-to-head league, maybe early second round even. Grab him if you have one of those picks 9, 10, 11, 12 where you're picking late first and early second. I might use one of those sandwich picks on him just because in a head-to-head league, he is going to help you come playoff time. So my guys, I didn't target as high of guys here because you're splitting hairs at some point when you're talking about number 19 versus number 20. I'm looking at bounce back candidates in the middle rounds, and Yu Darvish is as big as they come. He was a second round pick last year, had a good first half, and then just really stumbled down the stretch. But if you look underneath the hood at analytics, I don't see a whole lot wrong with Yu Darvish other than some bad ball luck. He might have been fatigued or even a little injured at the end of last year. I think he's a good bounce back candidate. Staying in Southern California, Anthony Rendon, worst season of his career last year. But again, that's just an exception. He's still reasonably young. In that lineup, you get Trout back. Otani is more established. I think there's a lot of RBI opportunities there for Anthony Rendon. Like him. And then we talk about closers. Raisel Iglesias, look, if you're going to take one of the top closers, I like this guy every bit as much as a Josh Hader or even a Blake Trinan. He is the closer in Anaheim. He is going to remain the closer. He's got a long leash as long as he's healthy. If you want one of the top tier closers, which we can talk about that later on, but I think fantasy baseball shifted a little bit to where you do need to target a closer. Otherwise, some of these teams are just closer by committee anymore. And if you want surefire saves, you have to get one of the top 6 or 8 guys. And I like Raisel Iglesias in sort of a 7th round area. I think Kyle Schwarber moving to it. The Phillies have a heck of a lineup. Their defense is going to be awful. But Kyle Schwarber, Nick Castellanos, Bryce Harper, JT Realmuto, think of the run-producing possibilities in that lineup. And Kyle Schwarber had a great year last year. He hit 40 home runs, even missing 6 weeks. So he's in a small ballpark. Love that pick. And then Justin Verlander, similar to what you guys were saying with maybe a slight injury risk. He's coming off of the Tommy John. He's older. I get it. But I don't think the Astros, who are one of the most analytically savvy teams in baseball, the Astros don't give that guy a big money 2-year deal if they don't think that he's got the goods. It's been more than a full year since he had the Tommy John. He should be recovered. I think if you can nab him in, say, the 12th round, you've got a steal there.
Oh,
yeah, I'm with you on Verlander. I think he's going to have a chip on his shoulder to want to have a couple more good years before he calls it quits there, getting up in age, but I think he's still got some juice. I like that a lot.
You say steals, that goes with the Astros, stealing signs,
When I say analytically savvy,
nobody knows how to give signs better than the
only some of that is
knock,
fair.
Or
and then the other
on
thing
the
is,
trash cans.
like you hate to accuse anybody of anything without knowing, but the sticky stuff ban last year changed some guys. I mean, some guys were demonstrably different after that ban. Verlander hasn't pitched since then, so we don't know if that will affect him or not. He's been a great pitcher for a long time, so I would think he'd figure it out. But there is a risk involved. I'm just willing to take it in the 12th.
I heard they have a free as much Metamucil in the clubhouse as he wants to take, so he's good.
Even better, man. Even better.
You
got to stay regular. It's important.
What is he? 52.
He's got a reconstructed elbow though.
Okay.
All right.
And he's 52.
We will shift gears and talk now about some guys who we think are ranked a little too high, that maybe you should wait on or fade. And now this is not to say that we hate these players. If they fall to you, they fall to you. But this is just, we're not comfortable taking them at where their average draft position is. So Spencer will take you. It's not that you're not going to take Wander Franco. You just might not take him in the second round.
Right. Yeah, I think the hype's getting a little too crazy with him. I think he's got a huge ceiling, great for dynasty leagues, but for redraft this season, I just don't know how ready he'll be to have one of those huge fantasy seasons to be worth a second round pick. I mean, he showed pretty well last year when he got called up, but I'm just a little leery. It takes we all know how baseball is. It takes guys a while to truly hit their peak, and I don't think he's quite ready for that. I think being a number one prospect is kind of inflating his draft capital there. And then the defending Cy Young winner, Robbie Ray, I mean, he's a strikeout machine. It's just throughout his career, he's been so up and down. He had a really up year last year, but I'm thinking that might come down some with Seattle. I think he'll get wins, he'll get strikeouts, but the ERA and WHIP is due for regression, I'd say. Same thing with Kevin Gausman. I think Gausman's he's probably I'm not targeting him at all because going to the AL East and he's another one that's been kind of up and down throughout his career. Had a career year with the Giants, got a big payday this offseason, but it's hard for me to see him repeating that. And then Fernando Tatis, I hate to say it because he's so fun to watch, but he always seems to have something. Now he's had the wrist fracture in the offseason, going to miss at least 2 months, maybe more. And even when he comes back, he's such an injury risk. He plays that reckless style, and it's fun in real life, but for fantasy, he's like a ticking time bomb because he's doing something every game. It seems like where he might get injured. And then Chris Sale, his ADP plummeting because he's hurt again. It's just certain of these guys, man. As talented of a pitcher as Chris Sale is, he just can't seem to stay on the mound. Always got something bothering him. And now it's something with his ribs. So it's like, at least it's not an arm, but it's just, I get frustrated with guys like that. After a while, it's like, if you keep fooling me, keep getting hurt on me, I'm not going to draft you anymore.
I like that choice of Robbie Ray there. And I say that as a Mariners fan, and I hope he does well. But I think it's the opposite of looking for a bounce back candidate, where if you draft Robbie Ray in the second round, you are buying the guy at the peak of his value, because he did have a great year last year. Can he repeat that, or was that a career year? That's the question you have to answer. Now, Jim, we're going to bring up your list too, and you have Tatis on it as well. So let's start there. Opposite question of what we said with Acuna. Okay, we're avoiding Tatis because of the injury, and he may miss half of the season. But at what point would you take it? If he drops into the 8th, 9th round, would you take it?
I think you're kind of forced to if that happened, but it kind of depends on your league structure. Again, I think this is a similar situation to Acuna with what you were talking about in a head-to-head league, where he's probably more valuable in a head-to-head league because if you have him for the last half of the year and you can find a way to, make it there and have a nice backup at shortstop in that position, then yeah. but I'm probably going to avoid this guy at all cost. I'm with Spencer. I mean, he's already shown that he's an injury risk. He misses time here and there. Don't get me wrong. When he's on fire, he's the best player in baseball. There's a reason why he was on the cover of the MLB game last year, because he does things that other players can't do. But I'm probably going to avoid him. He's going to be too expensive for my taste, and in the league that I'm in, I'm certain he's going to go too early.
Right. Yeah, I was thinking maybe I'd say a ninth would be I'd probably take him there. That's just like, especially in roto leagues, I'm staying far away because, like Zach had mentioned earlier, if you have a guy that misses a lot of time like that, it can get you behind. So yeah, Tatis is just in points, I'd probably say 7th or 8th round maybe, but roto probably not till the 9th.
Yeah. And if you look at the other guys,
Jim,
yeah, go ahead, Zach.
I'm sorry, Jim. Before we get to your other guys here, I have Tatis in the keeper league. So here's a question for you. I can keep him this year and one more year, or I can keep Carlos Correa. What would you do there?
Oh, that's easy. Correa is a no-brainer to me. You're getting 2 full years of Correa as opposed to a year and a half of Tatis. I'm taking Correa there.
Yeah, that I'd probably go with Tatis. His Correa is just, I mean, he's in a good lineup with the Twins, but he doesn't steal any bases. So if it's a traditional 5x5 league with steals as a category, I'd have to give the edge to Tatis.
I'm also always a guy who thinks that, and I'm in a 4x4 league, and I think that steals are overblown. I'm not drafting a guy because to me, especially in a 5 category league, you're talking about what's the difference between Tatis and Correa in a full season. I think Correa is as good in all the other categories, obviously not as steals, but just to get 2 full years out of him, I don't know. Again, Tatis is a guy that easily, in my opinion, could come back, and he's a guy that could go on the IL 2-3 weeks after he comes back because he tweaks something. I don't trust him at all.
All right, the rest of your list here, obviously, if Vlad is still there at number
100%.
8 or number 9, you're going to take him.
Right.
You're just not seeing him as a top 3 pick.
No, and look, he's a budding superstar. There's no question about it. I mean, he's already pretty close to superstar status, but you talk about 5-tool guys. I'd rather have a guy like Trey Turner. I know that Trey Turner's not going to hit as many home runs, but Trey Turner's going to hit 300. He's going to have 30 plus steals. He's going to have 100 plus runs. He won't have quite as many home runs and RBIs as Vladdy Jr., but I'd rather have Trey Turner there. I really would. And I think that drafting him in the 1, 2, or 3 slot is a little bit too early for me. And then Corbin Burns, it's interesting. Spencer had one Cy Young winner on his list. I got the other on mine. Nothing against Corbin Burns. I think he's an outstanding pitcher. But one of my number 1 rules, my cardinal rule in fantasy baseball, is when I do drafts, I never draft a pitcher in the first round. It is too easy to get burned, pardon the pun. But I think that a first-round pick for Corbin Burns I got to see if he's going to do it again before I'm trusting him to be my first-round pick. He never pitched more than I think it was more than 145, 146 innings in the minors before last season. So you got to worry about burnout as well. And they're going to start limiting his innings. I wouldn't doubt at all. Mike Trout showed some signs. Now I know he's only 30, 31 years old, but look, he was injured last year. He's showing signs here and there that he could be nicked up and banged up. Joe Maddon's the kind of manager that if he even thinks you're hurt and you're a star player, you're going to sit, and you may sit for a couple of days. So the days of Trout playing 150 games are over. Even if he's healthy, he's probably only going to play 145 games at the max. I think it just scares me to draft him bottom first round, early second round. Let somebody else do it. He's going to go there. Let somebody else do it. Josh Hader, you talked about him a little bit before, is back, and I'm just not high on drafting the closer, no matter who they are, at the bottom of the third round or early fourth round. There are so many closers, and closers' numbers are so similar. If you get one of the top 6 or 7 guys, let somebody else draft Josh Hader in the bottom of the third, top of the fourth round. You can get a closer somewhere else. You can get a great player there. Let them get their closer, and then you come around 5th, 6th round and get one of your closers, or really even get a closer in the 6th round and get another one in the 8th or 9th. I'd rather do that than draft Josh Hader in the 3rd or 4th.
Yeah, closers are tricky because, as I said earlier, like a lot of teams are going by committee now. But having said that, if you get one good guy, you can usually just scour the waiver wire the first couple weeks of the season. There's a great Twitter account called Closer Monkey, and they give alerts out. You put push notifications on, boom, new closer for this team, and you can be the first one to get into your league's free agent pool and grab that guy, because sometimes it takes a couple weeks to emerge. I mean, you look at guys like Kendall Griezmann last year, who was closing games for the Mariners,
right,
and then was traded to the Astros, did a tremendous job. Nobody knew he was going to be the closer. I mean, it was on draft day, you didn't even see his name anywhere. I mean, it was just not a possibility. And then all of a sudden, a month later, he was a closer and one of the best ones in baseball. So it is tricky, but you can, if you pay attention, you can cash in.
Camilla Duvall. We're going to get to it in a minute.
And we'll talk about him in a minute. Yeah. My 5 to avoid, similar to you, Jim, I do think starting pitching is becoming a little more valuable, just from the standpoint of there aren't that many guys who are going 7 innings a start and can give you reliable wins or quality starts or whatever it is that is and obviously the strikeouts too. Garrett Cole is one of those guys, and if he's still there in late first round, I'd consider it. But between the sticky stuff, his numbers went down after the sticky stuff ban, and the fact that there's so many good players available in that top 5. I toyed around with this. I don't think I take him in the top half of the first round. I just don't like it, especially if you've then got to wait. Say you're in a 12-team league, you're picking 4th. You have to wait until 21st before you pick again.
Yeah,
your lineup is really going to suffer if you do that. And so I'm not taking Garrett Cole. Opposite of what I was talking about with looking for rebound seasons, Marcus Simeon had his career year at the perfect time last year for the Blue Jays. I love the guy. I wish he was in Seattle. He's not. He's at a division rival. That kills me. But he's not going to be a 35 home run guy every year. I just don't, especially not moving to that new ballpark in Texas is a pitcher's ballpark. And I don't see him as a late 3rd round guy, early 4th round guy. It's just too high for me. Same thing with Bregman and Goldschmidt. These guys are getting by on reputation a little bit. Goldschmidt did have a good year last year, but he's getting up there in age. Bregman had 2 great years, 2018, 2019. His numbers were phenomenal.
Oh, you're going to get LSU fans hating on him.
I know. But again, especially if you're in a local league where there's a bunch of LSU fans, somebody's going to take that guy early 3rd round. It's too soon. He's been in the bigs for 6 years now. He had the 2 great years. His other 4 years haven't been so great. He's starting to show signs of being injury prone. Like you said, Jim, I'm going to let somebody else deal with that problem. If it's going to be early 3rd round or anywhere in the 3rd round, really, it's too soon for me. And then finally, Justin Turner, the guy's been Mr. Reliable for years. He looked cooked at the end of last year. In the regular season playoffs, that guy was cooked. And he's getting older. I'm not taking the chance.
I think it's because he cut his hair.
Maybe he's Samson. But he looked. He looked done, and I'm not going to take a chance. Even 10th, 11th round pick, I'm not going to do it. There's better players out there who have a safer floor. So that's where I'm at.
In that Dodgers lineup, he could, if he starts off slow, he could easily lose his starting job. So you've got those young cats nipping at their heels: Gavin Lux, Edwin Rios, so guys like him and Chris Taylor, and even Muncy. They've got to start be hitting out the gate. Because if they would slump, those young guys are chomping at the bit. They've got a lot of depth there.
Yeah, absolutely true. We also have some deep sleepers to talk about, but I'm going to save that for the end of the program here. I want to get into a little more of an overarching discussion. And Spencer, you put together rankings for us. And by the way, you can go to bet.nola.com, and Spencer has tiered rankings, which are very useful because sometimes, this guy's the number 17 hitter versus the number 18 hitter or whatever. But sometimes 17's a lot further away from 18 than other times. So you have to know, should I grab this guy now? I'm not going to pick again for 15 picks. If he's in one of Spencer's higher tiers, it's probably worth grabbing him. If he's not, if there's 6 more guys in that tier at that position, you can go ahead and use that pick on something else. So, but I do want to talk a little bit about, these are just your overall rankings, and Shohei Otani, who is going number 1 in a lot of drafts. Now, here's the thing about Otani. In ESPN leagues, he is eligible at pitcher and hitter, and you can flip-flop him depending on whether he's pitching that day. It's fantastic. I drafted him late last year. It was fantastic. I traded him at the All-Star break, which I think was a good move because he did slow down in the second half, but I traded him for Jacob deGrom, so that didn't work out. But my point is, in Yahoo leagues, you have to draft him separately. There's a separate Otani hitter and a separate Otani pitcher. So you're not going to take him number 1 if that's the case. But if you could get him at both, Spencer, you're taking him number 1?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, he's a cheat code, as a guy that he's a tier 2, could be a tier 1 starting pitcher potentially. And then of course, even if he didn't have that pitcher eligibility, he was so good as a hitter with power and speed and all that, you could still make the argument that he's the number 1 pick. So it's not even close in my opinion, especially if you can use him at both.
Jim, you're an NL only guy, so you don't have to deal with this problem.
Yeah, I'd have a problem with that.
But what would you? I mean, how do you approach something like that? Because I don't know that he'll be the last one. He's sort of set the blueprint for guys like this.
I've been a commissioner for 30 years now, between football and baseball. So if you want to combine the seasons, I've probably been a commissioner for almost 60 seasons.
My God.
I know. And I would not, I just wouldn't allow them to be both. You'd have to pick one. And we would probably, I knew you were going to play that at some point. But I pick one. We'd have to decide before the draft, is he a pitcher or a hitter? And obviously, if you're picking one, he's going to be a hitter. But yeah, I agree with you. I don't think he's going to be the last one of these, especially as teams are trying to trim salary, I guess to say. Even though as much as he gets paid, I mean, you're still paying one guy who can do the things he can do, and there are other guys like him over on the Pacific Coast, on the other Pacific coasts. I think you're right. We will see more of them.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, he basically creates an extra roster spot for the Angels, and he does the same thing, high level one at that, and the same thing for your fantasy team if you have him in an ESPN league.
Right. If you can use them for both, that's another thing. That's one less roster spot you have to worry about. I just think it's a little unfair as well.
I mean, I get it, but if you're using him, I also think, like, listen, Otani was fantastic last year. He had 37 home runs at the All-Star break. Do I have that right? 36, 37. But then he only hit like 12 in the second half of the year. Like, I'm not going to say the league's figured him out or that he's not an elite.
It was the home run derby that killed him.
But I don't know that this guy's going to hit 50 homers and win 20 games every year. I don't think he's that good.
It's not Babe Ruth.
Maybe I'm wrong.
They called the Japanese Babe Ruth. They called him the Japanese Babe Ruth when he came over, and he's looking like he might be that.
Maybe, and Babe Ruth didn't do that at the same time. He was a 20-game winner early in his career, then became a 50 home run a year hitter.
When I had him on my fantasy team for the Red Sox.
How did you handle that? Yeah.
Oh, we only allowed him to be a pitcher when he was with the Red Sox, and then when he moved over to the Yankees, he was only a hitter then.
I am shocked to find out that a National League traditionalist such as yourself was messing around with the American League when it was.
Well, I was really young then.
Yeah.
I was really young then. I didn't know that. I didn't know how to do it back then.
Yeah, there weren't as many teams back then, so yeah, there was less players.
Yeah, that's true. You had
my first year playing fantasy, the Cubs won the World Series. That was the one in 08. So
yeah,
that's how it all got started.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Your top 10 pitcher, Spencer. A New York flavor here. 3 of the top 4 are New York guys. boy, we talked about the shortened spring training. A guy like Jacob deGrom, boy, he could win a league for you, but you're rolling the dice.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's why at first I had him higher, but I moved him down a couple spots because I was like, yeah, he's coming off the injury and stuff. Yeah, he is a risk. Definitely wouldn't take him in the first round, but if he's there in the second, I think I might swing for it because man, when he's right, he's the best pitcher in baseball. There's no doubt. He had an ERA almost around 1 before he got hurt. I mean, that's unheard of for a starter. Like it's just he's nasty, man. This guy, I hope he can stay healthy. It's just all goes back to health with these arms. You know, these guys are, well, most of these guys are pretty reliable, but we all know how pitching can be fickle with the injury. Shoot, even a guy like Zach Wheeler, who had a career year last year, already had a slow start to camp and was saying he might miss some time early on, looking like he'll be good. But yeah, these guys, if you're going to, I would say in the first 3 rounds, considering that pitching is going to be hard to come by this year, probably with innings limits and such, I would say I would try to target at least one of these guys in the first 3 rounds.
One word,
Go ahead.
Mets. Where pitchers go to get killed. I don't want any. One of my, my having a golden rule that you can't pick a pitcher in the first round. Just not taking Mets pitchers. I'll take a Mets reliever maybe.
Not even sure.
Nope. Don't trust.
What's the most you're paying for a pitcher in your auction this year?
The most that I paid for a pitcher in the recent past is a guy that I drafted last year, and we'll keep him for $32, and that's Walker Bueller.
Yeah, he's a stud.
So, and Walker Bueller is my number 1 pitcher. He'll be my number 1 pitcher again this year. So I'll keep him at 32, but in an auction league where it's $260 per team and you have 9 pitchers and 14 hitters, I'm spending more of my money on hitting. You just have to. And so that was about my max. And I think at the time I really wanted him, but I was also getting a guy I thought was going to bid a little bit more on him too. But he was right on the cusp of that. I wouldn't have spent any more than that.
I mean, you got a good deal out of that too with the season he had.
Yeah,
so.
and I get to keep him 1 extra year for 32, so I'll keep him.
Before we move on, another question from Troy, Braves fan. What do you think about Mike Soroka? That's going pretty deep into drafts. I'd take him just because, and you guys may differ with me, but pitching gets real thin real quick in these drafts, and he's worth a flyer in my opinion.
They do, and the Braves may. Sorry, Spencer. The Braves may end up with a 6-man rotation. So,
well, I was saying that if they have an IL spot, I would take him late because then you could stash him on that. But if you don't have an IL spot in your league or multiple ones, I would say just I wouldn't touch him because we don't know when he's coming back. He's been injured now the past 2 years, that Achilles and all kind of. He's just been a walking injury. So if you have an IL spot, he's worth a stash. He's got upside. But if you don't have it, it's not worth it because even when he's right. Yeah. I would say he's not a big strikeout guy. He's good. Like he has good ERA and ratio, but his strikeouts weren't at an elite clip. And with pitchers, if I'm going to stash a pitcher, I like to have a guy with a lot of strikeout upside, which, I mean, he's got with Soroka, and that's another thing, his innings will probably be limited, so they can't expect a lot of wins either. So if there's no IL, I'm not messing with it.
I'd go a step further and say you need multiple IL spots. He's not going to be back until July. So if you only have one, somebody else is bound to get hurt at some point. You can't, you just can't use a draft pick on the guy. Maybe 25th round pick, he's your Mr. Irrelevant, and you stash him until somebody else gets hurt. But I don't
the Braves are going to have a 6-man rotation, I think, and they've already kind of talked about it with especially him in mind. I think for when he comes back, and I think going forward, that's going to be more of the norm. I wouldn't be surprised if the first couple months it's 5-man rotations, and then teams start flip-flopping towards a 6-man rotation. Which hence why you need to think about innings, lessening the innings requirement from 1,000. I think that's too many, and we're going to talk about that this year. But also, I think scorekeeping. I think we need to get to a point now where if a guy gets through 4 innings, and I hate to say it because I'm a traditionalist, but I think if a guy gets through 4 innings, I think he needs to be considered for the win.
I think the answer, to be quite honest, is just to not use wins. Wins are a terrible statistic. They might be the worst statistic in all of sports. It's just.
I don't agree with that.
Quality starts or something.
Yeah, quality starts.
That's not perfect either, but wins are just they're so random.
Well, I feel that way about strikeouts, and we do strikeouts to walk ratio instead. We don't do whip, and we don't do straight strikeouts. We do a strikeout to walk ratio, and it's worked out well. Yeah, it's worked out very well for us. But I don't think I agree with the wins thing. I guess it's a debate for another show, probably, because it would take too long. But if you, more times than not, you win the game, you deserve to win. Now, sometimes you win at 8-6, and you stunk, and maybe you don't deserve a win. But it also is part of drafting guys that, Braves pitchers are worth more. A lot of them are good anyway, but the Braves are going to score a lot of runs. Dodgers pitchers are worth more. Most of them are good anyway, but they're going to score a lot of runs. So, I mean, you think about that. I'm not going to draft the Pirates pitcher, even their ace. I'm not going to draft German Marquez because I don't like the Rockies, and I don't think they're going to score a ton of runs. So, I mean, that's all factored in.
It just goes to show you're in a 4x4, so wins is 25% of your pitching statistics. You have to think like that. One of my leagues is a 10x10. So wins is only 1/10 of pitching statistics. You also have quality starts. We have whip, we have walks, we have strikeouts. I
would probably like that, actually.
Yeah, it's a lot more balanced. You don't have to worry about it as much. So anyway, it's interesting, and it's I think there's an opening in that league, by the way, guys. If you want to, it's a keeper league, 10x10. So let me know, or somebody in the comments drop me a line.
When is that draft?
That draft, I believe, is Sunday the 3rd.
Okay.
The day between the Final Four and championship game, if you will.
Well, that'll be interesting.
All right, let's take a look. We're going to end the show here. Any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. We will get to them. We're going to end the show with a look at some deep round sleepers, or in the case of an auction, guys you can get for $1 or $2. And they will win you leagues in some cases. They will. Or guys, maybe you in a keeper league, you grab onto them and maybe they don't win you the league this year, but they look really good at $2 next year. So let's take a look. Spencer, we're going to start with you. Guys, you are targeting in the late rounds, like we're talking rounds 18 and on.
Right, yeah, and they've got a lot of value to be had in these late rounds. These are the late rounds. A lot of times you can win leagues. I mean, shoot, last year, for example, I had guys like Trevor Rogers, Jared Walsh that I got super late that helped me win my league. At the start of Tariq Skubal for the Tigers. He's a strikeout artist. His ERA and WHIP weren't the best, but he's young. He should be able to improve upon that. And then as far as wins, the Tigers made a lot of moves this offseason, so there's a chance he could get double-digit wins there. And then Mike Clevenger, coming off Tommy John surgery, a great bounce-back candidate, because before surgery, he was emerging into a dominant ace. And I feel like, moving into NL, he even coming off surgery, I like him to have a pretty nice year this year, being that he's a guy that he might not be quite as good as he was. He was so good, like right before surgery, and then he got traded there to the Padres, and they basically took a little gamble on him, and I think it's going to pay off for him now that he's right. Mondesi there for the Royals. I like him. He's an injury risk, but I feel like at that price, why not? Because he's a guy, when he's right, he's a stolen base cheat code. He's going to steal. If he plays every day, he'll steal at least 40, maybe 50, 60 bases. He's got a little bit of pop in his bat. Not the best average hitter, and they've got Bobby Witt Jr. coming up. So he is a dice roll, no doubt, but I feel like it's worth it there at that price. And Tanner Houck for the Red Sox, a guy I didn't know much about him. But I saw
shout out Mizzou.
Oh, he's a Mizzou guy. Yeah, he's Tanner Houck. That dude was really good last year. I was wondering, I was like, well, the Red Sox, their pitching has been kind of suspect, but then I saw they had some young guys emerging, and he was one of them. I think he'll definitely crack their rotation. And his innings might be a tad limited, but if they let him go, he'll be a steal at that price. And then Jeremy Pena, the new shortstop for the Astros, Carlos Correa out of there. Someone's got to step up, and Pena's a guy that, he's kind of speculative, but at that price, why not? He could be a guy that could hit some bombs and steal a few bases and is in a great lineup.
Yeah, and the Astros, boy, they have a history of bringing up guys, and their player development is just elite. I mean, you can say what you want about sign stealing and all that kind of stuff, and listen, I dislike the Astros as much as anybody, but they have some player development wins in the last 10 years.
I doubt you dislike them as much as I do.
Well, I don't know, man. I don't know. They moved into my team's division and just started cheating their way to the top. Pretty bad. All right, Jim, guys, you are targeting late in the draft.
Love Camilla Duvall. I mean, you talk about closers, and I love the fact that Gabe Kapler has been dropping his name, saying, "Oh, we're going to use a closer by committee." BS. About 2 weeks into the season, you might start off with a closer by committee, but this guy is electric. We saw what he could do the last 2-3 weeks of the season. I think there's no doubt that by May or June that this is going to be one of the top closers in baseball. And to be able to get him this late, I think is a steal for somebody. And speaking of steals, Jazz Chisholm, I love this guy, man. He is fun to watch. Going way too late, in my opinion. I don't understand that ADP at all. He's going to hit 20 homers. He's going to steal 20 bases. He's going to score 70 runs. I think, in fact, I would reach for – I'm not a reach guy, but this is a guy that I would reach for. And I'm talking about if you're in a 10-team league, maybe you're thinking 11th, 12th round. If you're in a 12-team league, maybe 10th, because I think this is a budding star coming up for the Marlins. And then kind of going the other way, Steven Strossberg, who used to be a star, is still a little injured. We're not 100% sure when he's coming back, but thinking maybe 20 to 25 starts for him. And look, he's only 33 years old. It seems like he's been in the league forever. But I think he's going to have something to prove. He signed through 2026. And I think the Nats are going to want to get him out there. So we'll see if they're not going to be very good is the only thing that's scary about him. I would not reach for Strasburg, but I do think he's better than his ADP. And then Riley Green, a guy who, a rookie who's never had a major league at bat. And Spencer, you talk about the Tigers and a young team. This is a team that could be really good in a few years. I like Riley Green because I like what I see of him in what I've seen of him in the minors, going from A-ball and then to AA and AAA in one season, and now up in the majors. I think this is a guy that if you can get him super late, he could be a guy, especially in a keeper league, that could dynasty leagues that could end up being a big deal for you.
Yeah, and I'll actually going to hit the Tigers' young player development too. I have two teams that I have two guys each from on my list. The Tigers are one of them. The other one is my Seattle Mariners. You may think I'm being biased. Maybe I am a little bit, but I think both these guys are stars. Jared Kellnick came up last year, really, really badly struggled. Went back down to the minors, came back up, struggled a little bit more, but by September, he was one of the better hitters in the American League. And so I think he sort of figured it out. I mean, a lot of guys struggle that first year. And I like him to break out a little bit, especially if you're in a situation in a keeper league. You can get some extreme value on Jared Kelnick, who's only being drafted in like 21st, 22nd round. And then we talk about the Tigers, like Riley Green. Yeah, he doesn't have any at-bats. He's coming. Spencer Torkelson's already there. He does have some big league at-bats. He struggles defensively, doesn't have a real position, but he rakes. And in fantasy, all we care about is that the guy rakes. And he is going to hit. He's already hit, and I like him. Brandon Belt, my third guy, again, has been injury prone. It was a thumb injury that cost him at the end of the last season, but he's long sort of been an analytics darling, and last year he had his best season ever, really, until he got hurt late in the year. So if I can grab him with one of my last couple of picks, I really like that depth. And then another Tiger, Casey Mize, guy out of Auburn, who was the number one pick a few years ago. Again, slow start to his big league career, showing some signs of figuring it out. If you can grab him late in the draft, I would do it. And then Julio Rodriguez, look, the guy, every time you look, he's only 20 years old. And the Mariners keep saying, oh, he's young. We want to give him time. We want to give him time. He was a superstar in single A at 19 years old. He was a superstar in double A. He went to the Olympics and was the best hitter on the Dominican Republic team that won the bronze medal. Went up to AAA hit. He's hitting 380 in spring training this year. Like, the guy has just done nothing but hit at every single level. He's coming, and I don't doubt anything he can do. If you can take him late, or especially in a keeper situation, you got to target the guy. Yes, I'm biased.
Oh, yeah. He got potential, no doubt.
There were no Cubs on my list.
No, but see, you're down on the Cubs right now. Austin Riley, another Braves question. I actually toyed with the idea of putting him on my 5 to avoid list. And that's just from the simple aspect of he had such a great rookie year. Can he repeat it? I just feel like there's going to be a little bit of regression there.
I disagree. I love Austin Riley.
All right.
Yeah,
I didn't put him because
I'm more on the train. I think he'll regress some. Like, I think he's a good investment for dynasty, but for this redraft season, I would probably not draft him because he had such a big year. I don't see him repeating it.
I don't want to pay for him assuming he's going to hit 30 homers and hit 300 again, because I just don't know.
Right.
Don't know that that's going to happen. But if you can get him at a price where you don't have to have, he hits 25 homers and hits 280, you might get that.
I love guys like him that are in loaded lineups, and the Braves have a loaded lineup, so I'm willing to take a chance.
All right, I like it. Any final thoughts, strategies, guys? Things you are thinking about differently going into this season as we wrap up our fantasy baseball special here?
I mean, not too much. I mean, mainly just going in. I've yet to do any of my real drafts yet. I've got a keeper league and a redraft league, but I'm not going to approach them too differently. I'm not going to panic and do some crazy strategies, but I do think that it's going to be one of those things like practice with mock drafts. Like, do a couple mock drafts before the actual thing goes. It's kind of gauge ADP and, check out, like, look at the, tier rankings, kind of have some tiers made up to kind of, and then have a somewhat of a strategy to where make sure you don't want to, make sure you don't get too many hitters early or too many pitchers to where you're forced to make trades right out the gate, because you never know. You don't want to depend on trades. You want to come out of your draft with a solid team and then try to make trades around May or June, depending on how things shake out.
Number one for me, Zach, is don't draft a pitcher in the first round. Number 1A is don't draft any Cubs. They stink. They're not going to be any good. Stay away from them. No, in all seriousness, I'm a tiered guy as well. And look, I have my list for each position. And if I got 4 guys on the first baseman list and we get down, the first 3 guys are gone, then you got to get the 4th guy, which is why that's another reason why I love auction leagues more than I like straight drafts, because you might have to spend more on making sure you get that 4th first baseman, because the 4th second baseman might slip, down to where, you can afford him, mix your money around a little bit. So that's why tiers are huge. And I agree with Spencer. You got to do as many mock drafts as you have time to do, because you have to be prepared when you get in there. I say that, it's funny. Nick makes fun of me because I brag about my 6 rings. It's not because of my drafting strategy. It's because of the moves that I make during the season and the pickups that I'm able to identify, I think, players by just seeing them a few times and saying, okay, I need that guy on my team or whatever, or being able to find a closer before everybody else. But historically, I have not been the best drafter in the world, and that's why I have to follow those tiers, and I do a decent job at that part. But you can't miss out. You can't wait and pick especially a corner infielder. You can't wait and say, okay, now there's 7 or 8 of them going, and I don't have one yet. It's not like an outfielder where you can wait and find one for $1 or catch a second catcher for $1. You've got to have your tiers ready and know which positions are most important.
Absolutely. And I'll just
don't draft Cubs
for a long, long time. I am interested in Saya Suzuki, by the way. I'm curious to see how he does. I don't know. I haven't figured out where
translating numbers from the Japanese league to the major leagues is always tough. It never translates correctly. I mean, sometimes they end up being better in the major leagues, and sometimes they end up being way worse. You just don't know what you're going to get. It is so hard to decipher. So I usually avoid those kind of guys. But hey, look, I hope that he does a great job, because we sure need him and a lot of other players.
Yeah, I mean, it just feels like one of those guys somebody will go too high on.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you want to be that person, but if he drops, he's worth a look. But I would say this: fantasy baseball, in a sort of traditional 5x5, for a long time, conventional wisdom was to target strikeouts and runs scored, because everything else would follow those two things. And I still think there's some truth to that. But I will say that statistics that are getting harder and harder to come by are wins and stolen bases. And so you have to pay attention. You have to get guys. It's hard to find a lot of starting pitchers going deep into games consistently. You have to have those guys to get consistent. And then it's hard to find guys who steal consistently. And so I think I've shifted my strategy a little bit over the past few years to target some of those guys just a bit more. So that's my final thought. Guys, it's been fun. This is a good resource for people over the next couple of weeks. And we will get together on the Fantasy Roundup throughout baseball season and into the summer when we start talking more fantasy football. So until then, enjoy your fantasy baseball, everybody. We'll see you back on Monday for Bayou Bets with some March Madness and some opening day next week. It's coming up pretty shortly here, just in about 2 days. So hope you all enjoyed it. This has been the Fantasy Roundup Fantasy Baseball Preview Show. For Spencer the Guru and for Jim Derry, I'm Zach Ewing. Goodbye, everybody.